Okay, this Quizlet is the one that we're making up for the quiz. The quiz would have been conditions, modalities, and rehab. I'm gonna combine the two options that you gave me together. I'm gonna do showing you like my annotations, like what makes me, like how I memorize, you know, which is which, or like which goes with which, and my explanation of it. The first we're gonna start with the rehab. Begin rehabilitation, and it's gonna be immediately after the injury. To my own understanding, it's immediately because you already want to get on healing the injury rather than just letting it like sit around and your muscles all around get weaker. So I just remember with rehab that it's going to be immediately. That's like what I remember, because it's always going to be right after. I always think of like a person in a couch, like just sitting down, and if they get hurt, you know, they're gonna rest for a while, but right after that they're gonna start rehab so they can get back up and running. That's my understanding of this. And then we're gonna jump down to conduction right here. It's heating through direct contact with a hot medium. The way that I remember this one is for some reason con makes me remember contact in the definition. So whenever I read the definition, I'll usually look for contact, because it's going to mean that there's going to be heating and contact with a hot medium. And the hot medium I already remember because of the heating part. So really I just remember the heating and contact part, and I remember conduction because of the con and the contact. That's the way I remember that. And sometimes I get it confused with convection, because convection is heating indirectly through medium such as air or liquid. Now the way I remember this one is with vect. I remember air for some reason, just like an air duct, you know. I don't know why it makes me think of that, but I always think of an air duct and all the air coming down. And for some reason, vect and air in my brain, I use it as a forgot the word. It starts with an M, but that's the way I really remember it. So I always remember that the cons right here, all three cons are always gonna have to do with heating. No matter what, they're gonna all have to do with heating. So it just depends. There's different heating, because then we jump down right here to conversion, and it's heating through other forms of energy. I remember conversion because version to me, I always think of it's a different version of the heating. And for me, I just remember energy, because it's still like energy, like you're doing like different things. So with conduction, I always remember the contact part with the con. Convection with vect, I always remember air. It's heating indirectly through a medium such as air or liquid. That's the part I remember. And conversion is heating through other forms of energy, because all these you're still heating. You're using a source of heat, but I just remember certain parts. So with all these, I remember contact, air, and energy. Those are the differences. Like the E with energy, and then convection, the I and air, and then contact, I have the con, and you know, the duct right here. So that's the way I remember those. Those all have to do with heating. This one, I always say it wrong. Cryokinetics, immersion in ice water until numb, followed by exercise within limits of pain for 3 to 5 minutes. May be repeated for several cycles. With this one, I do get confused a lot. It's one of the bigger definitions. For some reason, kinetics, I always think of movement. For some reason, I always think of movement. And in cryokinetics, I always remember that there's exercise in the definition. So I always remember that there will be an immersion of ice water until numb, followed by exercise. And for some reason, I connect kinetics and exercise together. And you know, that usually tends to help me put everything together when I do that one. But that one's a little bit shaky, I will admit that one. And then right here we have the definition: decisions on how to progress the athlete. Decisions on how to progress the athlete through a rehabilitation program should be based on what? So right here, I'm already think of rehabilitation. So automatically, I'm going to think of the healing process, because that's immediately what you're going to go to with the rehabilitation. With rehabilitation, you're going to go through the healing process whenever you deal with an athlete going on that type of program, and how the progress is. It's going to be on their own healing process. I also remember progress and process together. So rehabilitation, I really think of healing, and the progress, I think of process. So those are the two words that helps me remember that. We're gonna jump back down here. We don't really handle degrees a lot in sportsmen. Well, we do, but this is mainly how I remember it, because the 50 to 60 degrees, I'm always gonna remember the ideal temperature for cold ice water immersion. Back at with Mr. Chavez, we used to have to fill, the whole tubs, and I used to remember he used to nag that it couldn't be anything lower than a 50 and anything higher than a 60 right here. So you always have to find that middle ground. We'd always used to aim for 55. That was the magic number, and that's how I remember the cold ice water immersion, because I'd be there scooping all the ice. We're gonna jump back down here. This is another word I have really trouble pronouncing. Ischemia is what I'm gonna think of. Lack of blood supply to a body part. This one, it's hard for me. Mnemonic is the word I was looking for earlier. This one, I simply just really remember this one. It's really hard for me to put like a mnemonic in there. For some reason, I take right here this Mia part, and I think of blood. I have a sister. Her name's Mia. For some reason, she's not allowed at all into the well, there's a reason, but she's not allowed into the kitchen, because every time she's using knives, she's very clumsy. She always tends to cut herself. So for some reason, ischemia, I always think of blood, and it's a lack of blood supply to a body part. So I always think of my sister. She's lacking blood because every time she goes in there, she's so clumsy, and so I always remember ischemia is linked to blood. It's a lack of blood. Mia, my sister, maybe that's a bad way to put it, but it's what's helping me remember. We jump back down here, the isokinetic exercise. Maximum loading at a fixed speed with accommodating resistance throughout the entire ROM. So range of motion is what ROM. So right here, when we have ROM, I'm thinking of range of motion. I'm thinking of motion. Motion and kinetic for me, they match up. Also with the word exercise, that's gonna match up for me with ROM. So I'm always gonna remember at the end of this definition, it's gonna have ROM. Resistance, I also think of kinetic. When you're stretching, you can do kinetic. I always think of like kinetic stretches and everything, and sometimes your body's gonna give you a resistance. So to me, I'm thinking kinetic. Okay, automatically you're gonna have some type of resistance or movement or something, and exercise already gives away the whole range of motion thing. So then I look for these two words as my mnemonics. I fit it into kinetic and exercise, and I already know it's going to be the maximum loading at a fixed speed with accommodating resistance throughout the entire range of motion. So we're going to jump back down here. We have a pretty lengthy, in my opinion, we have a pretty lengthy definition. It's going to have to do with increasing the extensibility of collagen tissues, decreasing joint stiffness, reducing pain, relieving muscle spasm, reducing inflammation. You're going to have all these things that are going to come with the physiological therapeutic effects of heat. So automatically, I'm going to think of the effects of heat and physiological. Okay, so we already have those. And then therapeutic, it's already going to mean healing. So you're going to need to have that in your brain. And as my mnemonic, I always think of what's going to happen when you're healing. You're trying to reduce the pain for the athlete, first off. And the effects of heat usually have the tendency to do that when it comes to therapeutic modalities and all that. You're also reducing inflammation. Off the bat, when you're doing therapy, you really want to reduce inflammation to go ahead and start healing the actual body part that's injured, because that's just, a swelling of what's happening right there, because an injury just happened. And then you're going to come back down to healing and increasing blood flow. Automatically, when you're heating things, it's, in my opinion, it's not like ice. It's just going to like make something cold, like make the swelling go down and everything. It actually, makes your body looser. You're going to have increased blood flow. So whenever I think of increasing blood flow, I'm always going to think of heat in my mind and the healing and therapeutic. So I'm just going to look for some keywords. To me, I think of the 2 R's, reducing pain and reducing inflammation. That's going to come with each. Oh, and I think of the 3 R's, I'm sorry. It's reducing pain, relieving muscle spasm, and reducing inflammation. So I think of 3 R's. So automatically, when I'm looking at a definition, if I see the 3 R's, I'm going to use that as a mnemonic for the physiological therapeutic effects of heat. So that's this one. We're going to jump back to the second page. We have 2 more right here. Sorry if it's a lengthy video. Off the bat, we're going to start with the progressive resistance exercise. I say pre, and the reason that this helps me is because when I'm reading, I read a method to improve strength by ensuring muscles are overloaded in progressive manner. To me, for some reason, my mnemonic, when I put these together and I get that pre, I always think pro is going to come with it. Pro is going to come with it. Progressive resistance exercise is the meaning of pre, and pro is in a progressive manner. I'm always thinking, okay, if I see progressive manner within the definition, I'm going to think of pre, because to me, in my head, I'm thinking pre equals pro. And then along with that is you're trying to improve strength by ensuring muscles are overloaded in a progressive manner. So to me, the mnemonic that I use is pre equals pro, and that's how I remember that progressive resistance exercise means a method to improve strength by ensuring muscles are overloaded in a progressive manner. So pre equals pro is my mnemonic. So right here, then we're going to jump down into the transfer of heat through space from one object to another. Right off the bat, we're going to already highlight heat, and then we're going to jump, oh wow, this one confused me actually, sorry. We're going to highlight transfer and heat, okay? So radiation, every time, and I've actually gotten a couple of like x-rays or MRIs, people always talk about radiation. And to me, I always think of like a little like tower right here, maybe like a cell tower that's like this, and it's letting off all these rays. To me, I don't know why, but I always think of like heat and space, and to me, radiation goes together because it's the transfer of heat through space. So I remember transfer heat space. Because with me, radiation, I always think of rays. So it's always transfer heat space. So whenever I'm looking in the definition, if I see transfer heat in space, I'm going to use that as a mnemonic to assume that it's already radiation. Because then you already have your entire definition. You have the transfer of heat through space from one object to another. Transfer heat space, you already have those 3. You're just going to remember transfer heat space. And to me, that's the way that those work. So once again, this was to make up for the quiz of conditioning modalities in rehab. These are my mnemonics. I will send a direct picture to you as well, but that's the first test percentage or quiz that I'll be sending you.